The seagulls follow the trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday night. That can only mean one thing. It's just chimed past 9 o'clock. Well, maybe a minute late or so. Hey, different driver, but more things change, the more they stay the same. It wouldn't be right if the Bhoycie Bus wasn't a wee smidgen late. But yes, here we are, folks. It is the Bustalgia World Tour rolling up to the bus stop again. So come aboard, get your tickets. It is the time-travelling version of the Bhoycie Bus. And, of course, we are going back tonight to a very, very interesting year in Celtic history. Because as I've said before on the Celtic Years edition, we're not just going to look at seasons where we win all the time. We're going to look at all the different seasons that we've had over my lifetime. And this one, 95-96, is very, very fondly remembered. A team that only lost one league game all season still came up short. A very, very controversial registration going missing for one of our star players, which ended up costing us massively in the end. So I'm looking very much forward to talking about tonight. And as you can see, folks, he has returned. He's usually the voice of post-match pitch. Is the smooth Irish tones of the one and only Terry Robb. How are you doing tonight, Terry?
Good, Phil. Nice and fresh after a couple of weeks in Spain. Looking forward to tonight. It's one for the oldies.
Oh, it's definitely good. It's an old one, but a very good one to go back to, because obviously I sent the two of you a video as well. I'm watching some of the goals that were scored and the way they played football that season. Absolutely sublime. It is on target.
I was in the attic last night and picked out this bad boy. The only bit that I don't necessarily agree with, at the bottom it describes it as Celtic's magnificent 95-96 season.
Oh God. No, no trophies to show for this. I don't know if it really counts as magnificent. And Mr. Greenlaw, you're back with us again, the man from Canada. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great, Phil. Looking forward to this. I had a lovely time watching the documentary about that season the other night. It's fantastic.
Aye, it is a good one. So it was really, really handy, because usually I send you guys notes, which I still did send over. But yeah, I was like, wow, there's a whole video an hour long on YouTube that you can just click and watch, and it recaps the entire 95-96 season. I did, however, love how whoever edited it made sure not to show you any goals we conceded for the entire season. It's just like, if it's a game where we lost a goal, it's just like, oh yes, Hibs got a late equaliser on that game, let's move on to the next one. Right. So they just quickly dust it aside, like, nope, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the good stuff. But yeah, a lot of good stuff to look at in this season. And before we get started, I will do the usual obligated stuff, which is to remind everybody out there, if you're new to the bus, hit the subscribe button. Welcome aboard. If this is your first time watching, anyone's allowed on the bus. So yeah, just hit that subscribe button. Also remember to hit the like, and if you put in any comments, if you want to join in the live chat, if you want to share it, it all helps the bus at the end of the day. And of course, if you wish to become a member, you can do that as well. But of course, we must remind you as well that all of our content's free. The membership is just basically an optional thing. We're not going to suddenly hit you with, hey, we're now charging you for this stuff hidden behind the paywall. We're not going to go down the Patreon route or anything like that. It'll always be free. But yeah, if you ever want to just for a contribution towards Bhoycie, then feel free to do so. Many people have done already, and it's very, very much appreciated. Now, gentlemen, as always, we always start Bustalgia with a wee bit of a trivia. I've got a good one tonight. There's 11 answers, though, guys. How do you feel about that? The look on Liam's face tells me he's not liking that already.
Rubbish it is. It's on you, Terry.
Well, Terry, I could tell you this before you've already got one of the answers. You discovered it inadvertently in the pre-show when we were having a chat, because obviously in this season we signed on a man named Jorge Cadete. Now, Jorge Cadete's in a unique club because he has played for and against Celtic in European football. There are 12 players overall, including Cadete, so I'm looking for the 11 others who have played for Celtic in European football and played against Celtic in European football. There you go. Because Cadete played for Sporting Lisbon against us in '92, then signed for us. But yeah, Terry, he knows because me and him were talking before the show.
I've got one.
You've got one right away.
I've got one as well. Drop back.
Oh, dear.
Good stuff.
I've got two now.
There you go. But yeah, as we'll do, we'll come back to all the answers at the end of the show because there's a lot of them, and I imagine the comments will be flying in with them. It's not on a par with what I hit out with last week with the 15 players that played for that England B squad. That one was a hard question. So this time it's a wee bit more. It's more Celtic orientated. But yeah, that is what I'm looking for. The 11 other players alongside Cadete that have played against Celtic and for Celtic in European football. So, gentlemen, let's get started. Let's get diving right into this 95-96 season. And of course, as always, we like to just take a wee look at what's going on in the world around about the time at the start of this season. As it turns out, because this is a year that's an odd number, 1995, I've not actually covered this at all in my other Bustalgias, like the World Cups and Euros, because obviously they have fall in even years. So, yeah, we're in 1995. So, as usual, I have got the big football winners to sort of set where the football was. We get an idea of what was going on because, yeah, football has evolved massively, especially when you look at some of the winners here. So, obviously, the Champions League winner that year, it was Louis van Gaal's young Ajax team. They upset AC Milan. They could really call it an upset. I mean, they were a good team, that Ajax one, but they beat AC Milan, who were the holders, beat them 1-0 in Vienna. Patrick Kluivert scored a very late goal to get the trophy back to Amsterdam. But that team was ridiculous. It had Kluivert, Van der Sar, both the De Boer brothers, Edgar Davids. I think maybe Aaron Winter was there, Reisiger, but they were insane in the amount of the things that some of those players went on to achieve. And Seedorf would have been in that team because Seedorf's the only player that's won the Champions League with 3 different clubs, which is Ajax, Real, and AC Milan, I believe. But yeah, an obscenely talented team. And to this day, Ajax have still got that habit of just churning out really good stars from their academy. It's just a never-ending production line. But yeah, back in 95, they were at peak powers at that point. The UEFA Cup that year, it was back in the time when the UEFA Cup was played over 2 legs, the final, and it was an all-Italian final. It was Parma that won the cup that year, defeating Juventus in the final. Because yeah, Parma long ago were actually a massive force, especially in the 90s, with some of the players they had. But of course, much like our friends across the city, they went bust because they overspent. So Parma have had quite a checkered time of it since like the early 2000s. It's been in and out of administration and up and down from Serie A to Serie C and all over the place because they kept on breaking all sorts of financial laws. And the Cup Winners' Cup was still around at this point. It's a very famous one. It was when Real Zaragoza beat Arsenal 2-1 in Paris, and a midfielder by the name of Naeem, who'd played for Tottenham Hotspur, had an opportunity from about 40 yards for a goal, hit it on a half volley, just going for it. David Seaman was caught napping because he was standing way off his line. And of course, he falls back into the net. There's a famous image. He's just lying in the back of the goal, just looking absolutely dejected because it was in the 119th minute that goal came to win the cup for Real Zaragoza. one insult that is for, say, Arsenal to lose that, and then it's a former Tottenham player that scored the winner. So I'm sure Tottenham fans enjoyed that one. We know that our very own Regan, he's got a wee soft spot for Tottenham, so I'm sure that's one that's always celebrated in a Tottenham fans' world. Now, I mentioned last week, I was talking about Chris Sutton, the Chris Sutton edition. This is the year that Blackburn Rovers were the champions of England. Very, very unlikely champions, but they were spending all sorts of money, all sorts. So it's no surprise really, because it's not like as much of an upset as Leicester when you think about it in the context of what was going on in the mid-90s in the English Premier League. It kind of fits because Blackburn were like the biggest spenders at that point as well, so it kind of makes sense. Leicester was just an absolute lightning in a bottle moment, that one. And the FA Cup was a strange one as well, because Everton won the FA Cup there. They beat Manchester United in the final. Man U didn't have a good 1995. They lost the league on the last day. They lost the FA Cup final to Everton, which then gave us the unusual lineup of the Charity Shield being Everton against Blackburn. So that's always the season opener for the next year. So yeah, Blackburn v Everton would have been the Charity Shield or the Community Shield as it is now. And Liverpool beat Bolton Wanderers in the League Cup final. And interesting enough, Terry, before we came on, you said there's quite an interesting transfer story here involving Bolton, which is about to play a part in our history in the next year or so. So if you want to,
I think looking back at that English season, Blackburn, as you say, won the title, and a few years down the line, we signed one of their star players from that title win, which was Chris Sutton. However, Bolton had a really strong team at that time, and it was what final did you say it was? The FA Cup,
the League Cup final.
The League Cup final.
2-1.
So Bolton had got to the final of that, and their two prize assets at that stage were Jason McAteer and Alan Stubbs. And Blackburn, having won the league, wanted to strengthen their side that summer, and their top two targets that summer were McAteer and Stubbs, and they had agreed a £9.5 million joint deal for both of those players to sign for Blackburn, managed by Kenny Dalglish. I was reading Jason McAteer's book, and he said he was in him and Stubbs turned up with their two agents thinking we'll all go in together, this will all be done together, but they were separated, and the negotiations for the two players were taking place separately. So McAteer was in with his agent and Dalglish. They were talking terms. He was happy. Then the agent's phone rang, and Liverpool had shown an interest, and the agent advised McAteer to not sign anything. Let's go and speak to Liverpool. Dalglish at this point said, if you walk out this door, the deal's dead. You don't get a second chance. McAteer said, we'll come back and speak to you. I just want to talk to Liverpool. And Dalglish said, no, you go. The deal's off. By the way, the deal for your mate is off as well. So it was all hinging on McAteer as to whether Stubbs would get his deal or not. Wow. So the two players had a chat. McAteer said, look, I'm really sorry, Alan. I want to do this. Stubbs, being from Liverpool, supporting Everton, he knew how big a club Liverpool was. He says, look, you do what you need to do. They walked out of Blackburn. McAteer signed for Liverpool that summer. Stubbs stayed at Bolton, and then he broke Celtic's transfer record the following year. I mean, it's hard to try and liken it to the current day, but when you think about us taking one of the most sought-after talents in the top league in England and being able to go in there and match any bids from the teams down there, match the wages as well. There's a few more transfers that we can talk about a little bit down the line on this story, which just show at that time we could compete. We could compete with the English teams. This is a period as well where Sky were just starting to really start to get involved in football and Scottish football, and obviously that influence and the financial muscle that has gave to the teams down south have obviously meant that today it looks totally different to it was then. But in the period that we're looking at, we could get players that the top teams in England wanted, as could our rivals across the city, albeit they used whatever means that they used. But we'll touch on another. There's another transfer I want to look at a wee bit down the line, but I'll let it happen naturally.
No worries at all. Now, over in what happened up on this side of the border, up in Scotland in the 1995, Rangers won the title again because this is during their period of winning 9 in a row. But Liam, something very significant happened in 1995, then the 94-95 season. For the first time since 1989, Celtic actually got their hands on some silverware. Do you remember the final, Celtic against Airdrie? It wasn't the most thrilling of finals, but man, it was something that we needed so badly at that point. Because we were desperate for any sort of trophy. But yeah, do you remember seeing that one, Liam?
Unfortunately, Phil, that one I didn't get to see over here. I mean, we were
didn't
still in the
miss
days of see that the end of the season before it was like that. That was just before Satanta was coming in wide, and then after that, I think we started seeing nearly every game, like the following season, you know. And so I think that was the last. And I was still playing at that time.
It was, I would say, it wasn't the most thrilling of finals, but it was definitely one that, regardless of how Celtic won it, they just needed to get over the line because it was a Van Hooijdonk goal quite early in the game. I think it's within the first 10 minutes. It's a good cross for Tosh Mcginlay, which was quite par for the course at that point in time. Tosh Mcginlay really could put in a brilliant cross from the left-hand side, and Big Van Hooijdonk just headers it in. But yeah, Celtic just grinded it out by any means necessary. And the reason why I think is early in the season, it could have been so much better. Could have picked up 2 trophies that season. But sadly, 94-95 season, so we lost to Raith Rovers in the League Cup final. Interesting that we played 2 lower league teams in the Cup finals that season, because Airdrie were a first division team and so were Raith Rovers. And then the next season,
I was at that Cup final, the Raith Rovers one.
Oh, God.
I was at that game. Mate. Probably the lowest point in following Celtic in terms of games I was actually at where I left, and I was just so dejected because you've turned up expecting to win, and you should have won, and you haven't won, and you're standing there in Ibrox, because it was Ibrox for that final. You're standing there in Ibrox, and it is the worst feeling ever. I just remember I was still relatively young at that stage, probably around about 17, something like that in that final, 17, 18. And I just remember standing there, and it's the lowest I've felt at any stage as a Celtic fan, standing in Rangers Stadium, having just lost a penalty shootout against a lower league team with Paul McStay missing the key penalty. It doesn't get any worse than that.
I think for me and Russell, I think both of us have said it's our earliest memory. Because both of us sort of jumped on board the football after the 94 World Cup. So the Cup final against Raith would have been like November 94. It's just after Fergus, a few months after Fergus taking over. I think he'd also just done the share issue as well. It just came out as well. So it was like, again, try to get fans to invest in all that. And then we go and play in a Cup final and lose to Raith Rovers. And it's like, oh man, but things all worked out in the end. But that was a horrible, horrible memory. I say could have been, we did get 1 trophy that season, but could have been 2. But anyway, we'll get on to better times soon enough.
See, when you live away from home, Phil, that's when you find out who knows about Celtic and that. People come out to work and they want to tell you, and so you lost in. I think you'd think you supported a team, you know, and but you're always getting it, you know. Yeah.
Oh no, that's when you do see them. They're always happy to rub it in your face when it goes wrong. But where are they the rest of the year?
Exactly.
But our trophies that year, other major European leagues, I always go through. Real Madrid, they won the La Liga title. Juventus won it in Italy. Borussia Dortmund won it in Germany. FC Nantes won it in France. FC Porto won it in Portugal. And of course, Ajax won it in the Netherlands because the Ajax team is amazing. Now, I've been doing this recently on the Celtic Years One, the top 10 transfers in the world that summer, to give us an idea where that was, because as I say, transfers nowadays are absolutely obscene, some of the money that gets paid for players. But it's quite interesting when I look at this list, the prices that are paid for the players, but then in the context of 1985, you're like, it's a big fee. But nowadays, when you try and compute it, you're like, wow, I can't believe they signed this player for just 8 million quid or whatever. But anyway, number 10, George Weah from PSG to AC Milan for 6.2 million. Number 9, David Platt went from Sampdoria to Arsenal for 6.3 million. Number 8 was a Brazilian midfielder named Chao, who went from Sao Paulo to Inter Milan for 6.75. Number 7 is Andrei Kanchelskis, Man United to Everton for 6.75 million. Number 6 is Roberto Baggio, my favourite player of all time, Juventus to AC Milan, 8.37 million. Les Ferdinand is 5th in the list from QPR to Newcastle for 8.5 million. Paul Ince, the governor, Man United to Inter, 9.45 million. Somebody that you are a big fan of, Liam, Risto Stoichkov.
Right.
Barcelona to Parma for 9.9 million. He only stayed at Parma for a season and went back to Barcelona. Dennis Bergkamp is number 2 in the list from Inter to Arsenal for 10.1 million. And the most expensive player in the world that summer, biggest transfer, was Stan Collymore from Nottingham Forest to Liverpool for 11.7 million. Blows my mind, that one. It wasn't the world record at the time, but the most expensive transfer during that summer was indeed Stan Collymore. Changed times indeed. But in terms of pop culture headlines, number 1 in the charts, in the UK chart when we kicked off the season on the 26th of August 1985 was Country House by Blether. The headline acts at Tea in the Park that year, somebody that Russell often gets compared to and people are trying to slag him on Twitter. Paul Weller was headlining Tea in the Park on the Saturday. The Prodigy were also on the main stage early in the Saturday lineup. People headlined the main stage on the Sunday. Other acts like the Beautiful South, Kylie Minogue and the Charlatans were also on the main stage during the Sunday. The King Tut's tent at Tea in the Park was headlined by Elastica on the Saturday night. Supergrass were also in the King Tut's tent, and the Verve headlined King Tut's on the Sunday at Tea in the Park. The Glastonbury lineup in 95 is quite obscene. On the main stage each night, Friday night was Oasis, Pulp was Saturday night, and The Cure was Sunday night. The NME stage was The Prodigy, The Shaman, who you'd mentioned earlier on before we came on air, Liam. Elastica were on the NME stage as well, and other big acts that appeared in Glastonbury over that weekend were Simple Minds, The Black Crowes, Jamiroquai, Sinead O'Connor, The Charlatans, The Verve, and Weezer, which are some of the other big names at Glasgow. Number 1 at the box office when the season kicked off, if you fancy going to the cinema, the big film to go and see was the third Die Hard film, Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is actually my favourite ones of the Die Hard series. But yeah, that was number 1 in August of 1995 at the box office. So we'll now have a wee pre-season roundup and just take a look at what was going on then closer to home in football, what's happening in Scottish football as we headed in, because without a doubt, the biggest story going into this season was Celtic were now returning to Celtic Park after a year, a pretty dismal year at Hampden. Let's be honest, it wasn't the best one, but it was needs must, because obviously Fergus McCann came in. Before he did come in, we obviously talked about it a few weeks ago on the early 90s one of the grand plans that the board at that time had, other than moving to Canvas Lang, when that was kind of was falling apart. There was in this. They put in really rubbish seats in the jungle, I do believe, like really low down as well. Like they were basically they didn't really do anything about the foundation of the jungle. They just basically attached seats to it. And then there was a plan as well. Fergus McCann mentions this on the official history DVD. They wanted to just basically put seats in the east and west stand at Celtic Park as well, because obviously it's the old Celtic Park at that point where it's the round shape to the stadium, where you're very far away from the goal if you're in the east or west stand. And they literally just wanted to put seats in there thinking that'll be fine. But Fergus McCann was obviously like, no, we'll build a new stadium, but also have to play outside we'll play out of Hampden for a whole year. But yeah, we returned to Celtic Park, but only the north and the south stand were finished. We only had 2 stands at that point. So guys, what were your early memories of seeing the new Celtic Park as it was starting to come together? See, the Lisbon Lions stand gets built over the course of this season. They erect a temporary stand in the west side of the stadium at one point during this season as well. But yeah, when you first saw, because the first games are against Liverpool and Newcastle and some pre-season friendlies at Celtic Park, I think Billy Connolly opens the stand, officially opens it, cutting the ribbon. But Terry, I'll come to you first then. So what's your sort of earliest memories of that, the new stadium, and obviously the old stadium being abolished? What are you thinking of that, and what any lasting memories?
Yeah, so suppose if I think back to the old stadium, my normal vantage point when I travelled over would have been kind of the corner between what's now the Jock Stein stand and the original stand, the south stand. And I was one of those lads who got lifted over usually. I remember probably before this period here, Phil, before the new stadium was built, for most games, you had all ticket games and you had no ticket games. Yep. And your all ticket games would have been your Rangers games, Aberdeen, Hearts, possibly Dundee United, but nothing beyond that. The other games you could just rock up at the gate and pay in. And because my club at that time, they didn't they didn't have season tickets or anything like that. We could easily go to any of the non-ticket games. We could just rock up and you knew there was going to be you were going to be able to get in. My vantage point was just in that corner in the father and son section. I remember it was like £4 for the adult, £4 for the child. But even at that point, we were trying to save. So my dad was paying his £4 and I was on top of somebody's shoulders climbing over the gate and getting in the way. Obviously, when we came to the new stadium, that wasn't really any more of an option. I just remember that particular season. I don't remember what games or what game or games I was at. I was probably at 2 maximum that season, but I just remember the two ends, as you said, both absolutely bare. It was very, very strange. The game against Newcastle, just to touch on that a little bit, that's the one I hinted at earlier. So that was the game that kind of opened the new stadium, and there was a gentleman played against us that day that was very close to playing for us.
David Ginola. Or as a Jordan say, David Ginola, man.
David Ginola. And the myth now goes that Tommy had sold Celtic to this guy and he had pen in his hand, the ink was dripping out of it, and Fergus talked him out of it by asking him how he would feel on a cold winter's night at Brockville or somewhere like that. Don't know if it was exactly like that, but he was very, very close to signing, and what a signing that would have been for us, seeing that guy in the hoops. But going back to just the whole stadium piece, seeing the transition from the one-seater area with all the standing area. I'm lucky enough to have stood in the old jungle as well as the other bits and pieces around the stadium. I know normally was in that corner that I said, but I had been to the jungle. It was just really, really odd just to see the sheer size of that north stand. And it was also very odd looking with the two bare ends, and probably even odder looking with the temporary 2,000 or 3,000 seats that went in at that time. So it was strange. Fergus came in, he had his vision, he knew what he was going to do. And look at the place we have now. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Superb. Now, Liam, obviously you've been mostly based over on the other side of the Atlantic, but have you had chances to get to Celtic Park over the years since the rebuild? And is there any memories that you've got?
I was there that summer, Phil.
Excellent.
So I was there that summer. And I remember there was no games being played at the time, summer before the season started. And I remember we took a walk in Gallagher and that to go and see the stadium, and I remember feeling like really underwhelmed. As Terry says, like the 2 bits missing. I lived across the street for the Sky Dome in Toronto. It had just been built. Retractable roof and this and that. And I'm thinking, I might see what Celtic Park looks like. And you swear, okay, all right, But I've been back plenty of times. I've never sat in the same seat twice, and so it's good. I've seen it for all sorts of different. I've seen it for the very back, and I've seen it for the very front of the lower Jock Stein, and every vantage point there. But see, when you're back, come in, fans are singing and all that. It's just doesn't matter where you sit. It's just amazing. It's emotional.
Oh, it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the old stadium, obviously, many fans were very connected to it. It's like when you get rid of, you move on to a new car and stuff like that. If you've had the old one for a good few years, there's always going to be memories attached. The same with that stadium, even though Celtic Park was falling to pieces, it really was. It was like really dilapidated at that point and needed to be completely revamped. The idea of just buckling some seats into the jungle and putting them in the east and west stand, that wouldn't have cut it, no way. So it was good that Fergus McCann came in with that vision, because as Terry said, look at what we've got now, and in a few weeks in the Champions League again, it'll just be phenomenal to see it under the lights, because Celtic Park under the lights, there is just something about it. I know you're talking about just the disco lights. I'm talking about over the years with all the different, the floodlight system. There's just something about a nighttime game at that stadium, the way it's built, the way the noise just seems to travel around the stadium. It's just it's something else, man. It's proper, like, the hair proper standing up on your arm and stuff like that. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm about you, LA, before I got my season ticket, years before it, Liam, this 96, 97 season, the one that comes after this one, me and my dad went to quite a fair number of games, but we weren't season ticket holders. We just knew somebody that was able to get his tickets, and we were all over the place, like sitting in different vantage points and all. But I'll never forget the one time I sat at the temporary stand in the 97, 98 season. It was the Alan Stubbs equaliser in the last minute, and I genuinely did think that stand was going to come down, because It was bedlam when that goal went in. Absolute madness, that one. As I say, the temporary stand's been erected during this season, and there's actually a game that when we're talking about some of the moments this season, there's absolute bedlam in a game in particular. With a last-minute goal against Dundee United, where you look at the scenes in the temporary stand behind that goal and you're like, whoa, that thing's going to come down, definitely. But it's some stadium, and I love the banners that they've put up have just added to it. Obviously, they took down the ones at the start of some of them. People like, are they going to put up new ones? Because see when they did take them down, there was the one game that I went to, it was the Blackburn game, and I saw it without the banners, first time in years. I had seen under that, because the banners have been up for a good, since 2017 at that point, and you're like, could do a wee lick of paint, actually, could do a wee bit of a cleaning here. But no, when they put up the new banners, it looks fantastic now, and outside with what they've done with the Celtic way and stuff like that, and it looks magnificent. So it's a hell of a stadium.
See, for a lot of families, like, especially when you come back and you're visiting from, like, when you've immigrated somewhere, and that's like a family scrapbook. The amount of time I've went to a game with family, and you're pointing to areas of stands and that, and say, oh, that's where your granddad used to stand over there, and that was where all the boys for Castlemont or this or Denson, they used to all congregate here, and it's like looking through a photo album, and that's the beauty, and the emotional context of, why it's so much, we're proud to have it as our stadium.
What's your thoughts, guys, on whether the old stand needs to be brought up to the level?
I'm okay with the old stand as it is.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. What I like is when you're approaching that bit. My memory is, as a kid, just approaching that sort of red brick front and the glass doors at that, But when you're approaching from that side, you can actually see inside the stadium, because that bit is smaller, and I'm okay with it, but I know that there are lots of fans who think it looks unfinished, kind of thing. I just wanted to sort of get your views.
I'm okay with it. I mean, every so often this will do the rounds on Twitter. Some Celtic out there will be like, oh, I've heard that this is going to happen, and they'll post that same Photoshop that somebody's done with all the stands brought up the same side, and it's like, it's not going to happen. It's not happening, okay? It's just not. It looks fine. I think it's okay the way it is, honestly. I like the front. The stadium is still that same one that they put up in like 1987 from the centenary season. It's like there's something. It's good that they kind of kept that old part of it. It kind of still ties it to what it used to be. Because a good example of that is like seeing the stadium the German national team play out of, Hertha Berlin play at the Olympiastadion, where it's been revamped, but there's a bit behind one of the goals where it's still got the old steps going up to the Olympic torch. They kept that from like 1936. So they just kept that wee section, no fans sitting in it or anything. And it's just like, it kind of still ties it to what it used to be. And I kind of like that the front at Celtic Park and that the main stand is still pretty much the same. And you've got that press box hanging down from the roof in the south stand with the Celtic Football Club across it and stuff like that. So I kind of like that. I'm a wee bit of a traditionalist with things like that. So yeah, I'm quite into that one. What about yourself, Liam? Would you be in favour of the bringing it all up to the same level?
No, I don't know. I mean, right now, I think whatever they do, if you do, yeah, there might be a tasteful, cool way to do it. There's a guy that does stuff like that with Lego, where he fills bits in it's missing. Maybe we make a big sponsorship deal with Lego and we do it in green, white, and gold Lego bricks. Nah, I mean, I'm a traditionalist when it suits me. Yeah, but it's fun. Do it. If we find a really cool way to redo the building, yeah, do it. But right now, keeping the pieces that people remember and that have like that are meaningful. Go for it.
Somebody pointed out years ago on Twitter, like now, because obviously 3 of the stands are all the same size. So if you're flying over it on a plane, it's the letter C. Obviously, C for Celtic. See if you put LED lights like around the rim of the stadium and it lights up at night, a plane or a helicopter flying overhead, it's a big letter C in middle of the city or in the East End. So I was like, that'd actually be quite interesting to see. I remember years ago, we played Mcginlay'S. I think this is where this came from, because we've now got like green lighting within the stadium, like in the doorways and stuff. But I remember after we played Gladbach in the Champions League, they had like green lighting and stuff like that. And then conveniently, when we got the disco lights installed, we also installed like green LED lights in some of the the doorways when you're coming through like section 139 and stuff like that. I've noticed that as well. So there's some wee things they add here and there. So I don't know what the next step will be, what the next thing that they'll update is on it. But yeah, it's some stadium. But I was actually going to be talking about the stadium at some point later, but we'll talk about it now because, as I say, it's one of the main headlines. But interestingly enough, as I say, it was a dismal year at Hampden playing there. But here's something quite sensational. Even though we finished 4th, obviously we lost the League Cup final, we won the Scottish Cup, right? But it wasn't a stellar season. So the Scottish Cup final was just, we needed to get it by just something to try and kickstart after a few dismal years. What was it, 1989 the last time? But sensationally, despite playing there, our record against Rangers over that season was actually not too bad. We played them 4 times in the 94-95 season. We won twice, we drew 1, and we lost 1. Unbelievable. And it's like, this is the thing in my head. You always think about the early 90s Celtic and how bad they were. And the league position shows that we were well off the pace, but we always seemed to be able to give them a game. It's always a really weird anomaly. But yeah, despite the rubbish season at Hampden, but yeah, 4 games against Rangers, 1, 2, drew 1, lost 1. So not too bad at the end of the day. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of optimism around the return to the stadium, especially after getting our first trophy in the bag for a while. We obviously had a fan favourite as manager. So the fans were very optimistic that this could finally be the season. We could really go for it, So the signs were looking good. But of course, other stories as well. Going into this season, now obviously this is before the days of transfer windows. It's not just a case of you get to the end of August and then UEFA are like, nope, no more transfers. Obviously we can sign players throughout the season. But during just the summer months alone, we only signed 2 players that summer. Andreas Thom came in from Bayer Leverkusen for, I've heard different quotes. I've heard people say it was 4 million. When I went on Wikipedia, it said 2 million. So I'll just call it in the middle and say 3 million. We'll just settle down the middle for that one. But yeah, Andreas Thom is a multi-million-pound signing from Bayer Leverkusen. And the other signing was Yogi, John Hughes from Falkirk for £400,000. But as the season went on, I say there's no transfer windows, we would sign Jackie McNamara from Dunfermline, £650,000. Morten Vikost would join from Dundee, a swap deal of Barry Smith going to them plus £500,000. And as we will be talking about later, in March, or February 1996, we didn't get officially onto the park until April 96. We signed Jorge Cadete as well, but leaving Celtic in the summer of 95, Charlie Nicholas was away. Somebody you mentioned a lot recently, Liam, Paul Byrne, he was away. He left. Tony Mowbray would leave during the season. Willie Faulkner, Andy Walker, Mark McNally, Mike Galloway, and Rudy Vatter all left during the 95-96 season. Now, here's something that Russell brought up when he's been talking about our board and, spending and always just trying to stay that bit ahead where, instead of reacting to what the other team are doing, here's what the other team did that summer. Despite us finishing 4th well off the pace, they went out and they bought Paul Gascoigne from Lazio for £4.5 million. That's the summer they brought him in. They also brought in World Cup Golden Boot winner Oleg Salenko that summer. But that one wouldn't work out too well because Oleg Salenko would only last a couple of months and then you get punted away to, I think it was Fenerbahce, to bring Peter Van Vossen to Ibrox, which wasn't much better than Oleg Salenko. They also brought in Gordon Petric during the summer, and throughout the season, they would also sign Derek McInnes, Eric Bo Anderson, and Theo Schnelders. Ali Maxwell, Basil Bowley, and Mark Haitley would all leave during the season. But yeah, hilariously, World Cup Golden Boot winner Oleg Salenko only lasted about 4 or 3 months, and then he was punted away in a swap deal to bring in Peter Van Vossen. Now, something interesting happened to Celtic's pre-season tour, guys. Went and played some games out in Germany against some lower league teams. What tradition was born during this pre-season tour in 1995 in Germany? Oh, you muted yourself, Terry.
Terry, do you want me to take it? You know it, right?
I'm having a bit of sound problems here. I'll let you take it away, Liam.
Go on, Liam.
It was a huddle, right?
It was a huddle, mate. It
Big
was. Like Tony Mowbray, it was against one of the lower German teams that we played, maybe in the first one of the pre-season. But yeah, the huddle was born in a pre-season game in Germany. It was after Tony Mowbray had lost his wife to cancer, and it was a sort of act of solidarity with him. But it became an iconic thing now. I mean, I literally used the picture on the thumbnail for this. It's incredible. It just gets the fans G'd up. It's amazing what it's evolved into. And obviously, we see other teams around the world do it as well. And it is quite hilarious when you see ex-Rangers players are so petty that they won't even like join in. Like Sheffield United do it, and you see that Ollie McBurney standing there like upright while the rest of them are all huddled, and it's like, you look like a total fanny, mate. Stop it. You're not staunch. You're just a total and utter bellend. Stop it. The absolute state of them. But the huddle was born during the pre-season tour.
I think it's pretty amazing. I think it's pretty amazing that it's still done to this day. It's a great legacy. It's a good, for you mentioned Tony Mowbray there. I sort of remember him by his nickname Mogga at the time, and he was one of my favourite players because I was always into my centre halves. I was a massive fan of Paul Elliott beforehand. I thought Paul Elliott was a complete Rolls Royce. I mean, for me, Paul Elliott and Virgil van Dijk are probably the best two centre halves that I've seen at Celtic. But I loved Mowbray. I just loved his attitude, his aggression, his never say die attitude. And I think you said John Hughes had come in, and John Hughes, he kind of sort of pushed Mowbray to one side, and Mowbray's time was up. And the thing that I think about quite often with those two is the types of centre halves they were. I would describe them as rugged is probably not doing them a disservice. But when they became managers, they wanted their sides to play with such a great passing out from the back sort of football style, and it was a complete contradiction as to the way those two guys played themselves, because they were both two real up and atom centre halves, no nonsense, rosette if you had to.
Yeah.
But when they moved into the management side, their view on it was totally different.
It was interesting story about Tony Mowbray, because I've seen this on the official history DVD. Do you know what game inspired him to sign for Celtic?
No.
He attended the game against, I'm going to try and pronounce this right. I'll just say the second part of their name so I can pronounce that. Zamax. He came to Celtic for the second leg against Zamax, even though we've been pumped in the first one, 5-1. And we won 1-0, but he just said, it's on the official history DVD, and he pops up and he talks about the night he decided to sign. He came up to Celtic Park for that game. He was in the crowd, and it was the energy around the stadium and stuff like that. And I'm like, of all the fucking games that could sway you to sign for Celtic, going out to Zamax in the UEFA Cup. But yeah, that was the game that actually brought Tony Mowbray to Celtic. He was won over that night by the atmosphere at Celtic Park, the old Celtic Park it would have been. But yeah, I was like, wow, all the games. Picking our history, incredible. And how's it said? Nostal Zamax? I think I called him Nautical Zamax.
Neuchâtel was the pronunciation I remember from the time.
Right, okay, Neuchâtel Zamax. As you said, Liam, there was a barman that used to buy any old obscure top of a team that would beat Celtic.
It was the guy that ran the door for Setanta. He was a rabid one.
Oh, rabid was he? Aye.
Yeah, he was just doing slight digs, Yeah, you know what I like.
Oh, by the way, big shout out to PM, not me. I know it's the same initials as me. I've not got like an alter ego in the chat. PM has just become a YouTube member. Russell will be happy about that. Thank you very much, PM. Always encouraged. But yeah, we'll move on to what was going on then with the pre-season. So I say we kicked off playing against some lower league German teams. I'm going to try and pronounce these names. I'm probably going to butcher a lot of them, to be honest, but I'll try my best. So the first team that we played was a team called Lübeck, Leubeck. We beat them, defeated them 2-1, but then we would lose 2-0 to a team called Emden Kickers. Yes, that was the name of the team, Emden Kickers. And then we'd also lose 2-1 to a team called Wilhelmshaven. Yes, that's how that one's pronounced. Yeah. They finished the German tour, though, a 0-0 draw with St. Pauli. But then we come back to the UK and we play Birmingham City at St. Andrews and lose 1-0 and draw 2-2 with Everton at Goodison Park. But then we get the opening of Celtic Park officially with 2 draws against Liverpool, a 1-1 draw, and we draw 0-0 with Kevin Keegan's Newcastle. Quite an interesting connection as well there is this is the season that Kevin Keegan's Newcastle nearly won the league. Well, I say nearly. They kind of fell away. Was it 2 or 3 games to go? But they were 12 points in front of Christmas. That was the one when he had the meltdown on Sky, saying, I would love it if we beat them, love it. But his team were also known as the Entertainers that season. And this Celtic team are kind of sort of, affectionately known as the Entertainers because how well they played. But both teams have got something similar this season for as well as they played. Just came up a wee bit short at the end of it all. But yeah, I find that quite interesting that at the start of the season, we played Newcastle, who had a similar sort of flamboyant, attack-minded team that season as well. Tell you, was it the Newcastle game you said, or the Liverpool game? There was Newcastle you said earlier on, aye.
No, I wasn't at the game. I just mentioned that game because
Oh, you
of
mentioned
the
it, sorry,
connection
yeah.
with Mcginlay'S.
Ginola, yes, indeed. This is before the year before Shearer signed it, so it would have been Les Ferdinand. Tino Asprilla hadn't joined yet. He would join midway through the season, but many believe that he was one of the catalysts for why Newcastle did fall apart, because he was a bit of trouble for Tino Asprilla. But yeah, that wraps up the pre-season stuff then. So before we get into the season, so what I'll do is we're just over 45 minutes in, so I'll put in the musical interlude just now. When we come back, we will get delved right into the 95-96 season, talking about some of the fantastic football that Celtic were playing, some of the great memories and players along the way. So we'll be back in about 2 minutes, guys. So we'll see you in a mo.
The seagulls follow Chora. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't bite done, double done. Don't bite done, double done.
And welcome back, folks. Just saw a comment here. This just remind me. Terry, big Stephen Tomlinson from Endless Celts is looking for you because you and him actually live very, very near each other in Northern Ireland. So he says to get in contact with somehow because he mentioned to me, but you're not on Twitter. He's not on Facebook.
I actually am on Twitter. I've got a Twitter account, but I have no clue how to fucking use it. I tried to use it and I didn't know if I was tweeting myself, tweeting somebody else, or tweeting fucking nobody. So I left it as it was.
Don't do that thing. What was that fucking member of Parliament did? That guy Ed Balls. He didn't know how to search, so he ended up just tweeting his name, Ed Balls, because he went to search to see what people were saying about him. So he's literally got a tweet on his account saying Ed Balls from Ed Balls. So as long as you do something like that, searching Terry Robb and just tweet your name or something. But we're making clangers like that, mate. That's all right then.
I'll get in touch. I'll get in touch via Russell or something.
Find a way somehow. A carrier pigeon or something. We'll find a way. But yeah, guys, we'll get cracking on then to what was going on with this 95-96 season. So the first thing I think we need to talk about is the Celtic way. Though it's not that very fancy outside front of Celtic Park with the way it's all decorated now, even though it's called Celtic Way. I'm not talking about that Celtic Way or another YouTube Celtic show as well. I'm not talking about that Celtic Way. I'm talking about the mantra, the Celtic Way, that ethos that's around the club. Because I've always felt, for as long as I've followed Celtic, this has always been a thing with fans. And when you ask a fan to define it, a lot of them are just kind of like, I don't know, it just sounds cool, I guess. But when you compare us to Rangers and the way they play and the way they go and win games, their ethos has always been just by any means necessary. If they have to play absolutely shocking, like they've done under Walter Smith in that UEFA Cup run years ago, but it gets them a win and gets them progressing. They're totally shameless about it. But with Celtic, there's always a sort of like, we're going to win and we're going to do a bit of style because that's the Celtic way. So the way I sort of define it is it's about being on the front foot all the time, always attacking, always looking to go forward, having garrulous wingers, guys that get you off your seat, people like that, they type of players, they're going back to the years of the Jimmy Johnsons of the world. These are the things that are associated with Celtic, a lot of like flamboyant play and stuff like that. The idea of like playing with 10 men behind the ball for a game would give some fans an absolute fit. They'd be like, what? What, 10 men behind the ball at Celtic? Never. We cannot stand the idea of that. But yeah, so the Celtic way, this is probably the first season because obviously we covered it on Bustalgia a few weeks ago. The early 90s have happened, the 90 and 94 period. The last good season Celtic had at this point was a centenary season in the 87, 88. So it's been a bit of darkness for a few years, but I feel like this was the first season that a lot of fans, old school fans, could have went, I've got my Celtic back. This is the Celtic that I know, the way they're playing. So Terry, I'll come to you first. What was your impressions early on of this particular squad and the football that they were playing under Tommy Burns?
See, even during the pre-season, Phil, although we'd finished 18 points behind Rangers, we'd finished behind Motherwell, we'd finished behind Hibs, and just as alarmingly, we'd finished only 3 points ahead of Falkirk, which when you think about where Celtic are today in the last decade we've had, it's very, very difficult to imagine that could ever have been the case. But even during that summer, there was real optimism because we'd won the cup, which was the kind of final game of the season. So you had that buzz at the end of the season. There were shoots of our sort of seeds where you could see what Tommy was trying to do. There was also the belief that going back to Celtic Park would help bridge that 18-point gap in some way as well. And that summer, I do actually remember that summer because I was in Scotland playing in a football competition in Falkirk at the time, and the transfer dealings that summer were, it was just constant. Obviously, Gascoigne had gone to Rangers, which was massive news. But the calibre of player that Celtic were being linked with during that summer, I mentioned Ginola earlier. We were also linked with Marc de Grisse from Belgium, who was an absolute baller. We were linked with Dmitry Radchenko, who was the partner of Solenko in the Russian national team at that time.
Oh, okay.
And then ultimately we got Andreas Thom, who I know you weren't quite sure of what the fee was, but he was Celtic's record signer at that point.
Right.
Andreas Thom played over 50 times for East Germany. And then when the two countries amalgamated, he 10 or 11 caps for the overall German team. This was an excellent footballer that we had signed. And I just remember kind of exciting. I know the transfer there wasn't a window as such. And I know that when you look at it on paper, we probably didn't come out of it that strong. But the fact that we were even interested in players of that caliber and they were players that people had seen either in the Euros or the World Cup, and there was a possibility that we could possibly get them. And the fact that we actually got Tom over the line, it was a really exciting time. And then obviously early in that season, we brought in McNamara. We had Simon Donnelly on the right-hand side. So you're talking about that sort of the Celtic way. So we'd McNamara, a real attacking fullback, with Simon Donnelly on the same side. They had a great understanding together. You've probably seen that in one of the best goals of that season where McNamara scored at Easter Road, I think it was. Simon Donnelly was involved in the move, so was Van Hooijdonk. Those two guys had a great understanding. On the opposite flank, you had very, very underrated Tosh McKinlay, who we got from Hearts for 350 grand. And we had John Collins, who was an absolute Rolls Royce of a player. And I said to you earlier, my memory's kind of tarnished by the way John Collins left Celtic. He was the first player to walk away on a Bosman. John Collins would have been worth a lot of money to Celtic at that time. Thinking about it from his perspective, he had the opportunity to go to Monaco, and Monaco at that time, along with Marseille, were probably the PSGs of that era. PSG at that time were not the PSG they are today. I know we will touch on them in a moment, but Monaco was the place to be at that time because of the tax advantages available, and Collins obviously got the opportunity to go there. It defies belief that John Collins only won one medal in Scottish football. One medal in his 6 years with Celtic, which
Mental.
was that cup final. That was the only trophy Celtic had won in 6 years. That, again, thinking of the last decade, how do you go that long without winning these things? But Collins went to Monaco, and they won the French League the year after, and they got to the last four of the Champions League the following year. So I think from his perspective, what that shows is just how talented a player he was, and probably taking away your Celtic goggles, he probably made a great decision for himself, because he was able to go and showcase himself on that particular stage. But going back to your question, going into the early part of that season, even though the previous season hadn't been great, there was optimism that this was the year that this team could obviously stop the monopoly from the other side of the city.
Yeah, definitely. Now we'll go in and concentrate on a few different players. I think I've got a few outlined. And here's one right away that Graham Martin's brought up. Jackie, you could say, was Tommy's best signing, because that's one of the first ones I've got highlighted here is Jackie McNamara, a very under-the-radar signing from Dunfermline, 650,000. But Liam, I don't think at that time you could really understand that the career that Jackie McNamara is going to have. It be a 10-year plus career. He signed in 95 and left in 2005. So a 10-year career. He would be club captain at one point as well. But as Terry touched on there with Jackie McNamara, in particular, there's a goal that he scores at Easter Road where he plays the ball into Van Hooijdonk. He keeps his run going. Van Hooijdonk pings it back to Donnelly, who then knocks it over the defence. And McNamara's kept that run going, and he meets it perfectly in the volley in a 4-0 rout at Easter Road. But yeah, like Jackie McNamara, what's your memories of him and how good he was? And as Graham Martin's rightly said there, he could easily be seen as Tommy's best signing, without a doubt. I
think you were talking about it earlier about the Celtic way. That seemed to be a throwback to, like that's the way we like to see our fullbacks attacking. I love the way he attacked with the ball. I love the way he linked up with Simon Donnelly. You can see that now, but such a friendship and a bond that happened over the time there. You can see, but there was that immediate connection between them. They knew where each other was. Amazing how young he was in that video, when he's
the shot is so big on him as well. It's huge.
And only because we still see him now, right? Like showing up in Celtic TV and podcasts and stuff like that. And it's amazing. We've seen his entire career in front of us, and that's what I think Tommy Burns was trying to find himself in Jackie. I think that was like it projected, like, all right, this is the way I would have wanted to play, and this is the way I want to see my fullback play. This is the way I want to see Celtic playing, with this sort of swagger, this bravado that we can bring from, don't play at left back or right back, play from there, Very, very similar to what Ange is doing.
There's something just, I'm not going to compare the two players, they're from totally different eras, but there's something about Juranovic that sort of reminds me of McNamara. I think it's just his composure. I think about Juranovic taking that ball out of the sky at Ibrox, and Jackie McNamara was very, very composed in possession. And like I say, I wouldn't start to try and compare the two players, but there's just something about Juranovic's poise, and it just reminds me of McNamara a wee bit.
Oh, it's a good one in terms of what he went on to achieve. Because at that time when you signed him, you couldn't comprehend the idea that he would go and have a 10-year-long career at Celtic, get a testimonial at it. So he became the club captain in the 03-04 season. I think he was wearing the armband quite a lot at times, or was it the 04-05 it would have been, because Lambert had left at that point. But yeah, I have a phenomenal signing, and yeah, he was a great utility man, because he ended up playing centre mid at times under Martin O'Neill. Sound that Martin O'Neill clacks and everybody. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he ended up playing in the middle of the park as well at times under O'Neill. And he definitely, when he came on and scored in the 2001 Scottish Cup final, he was deployed at centre midfield that day because somebody went off injured early in the game, and McNamara came on to replace him and ended up scoring the opening goal. But yeah, a phenomenal player. And yeah, as you say, Liam, he does epitomise the Celtic way, because he was also complemented very well by somebody else that Terry mentioned on the left-hand side, Tosh McKinlay, another very attack-minded fullback. And as I said earlier on, talk about the cup final when Pierre Van Hooijdonk scored, the cross that McKinlay puts in. And even during the season, I say he was notorious for putting in great balls from the left-hand side. But the game at Ibrox, where we drew 3 each, the Van Hooijdonk equaliser to make it 3 each, it's a brilliant first-time cross from McKinlay. Peter Grant plays it out wide through the channel, and he just runs onto it. I don't think he has even look up, just pings it across, and Pierre Van Hooijdonk with a glancing header, and it goes in off the back post. But yeah, man, Liam, how good was Tosh McKinlay as well? Underrated, would you say?
Underrated, I think a lot of the reason he's underrated is because of what happened with him and Larson in training.
Aye.
Years later, where he gave Larson a black eye or something. I think that was Larson's first season, and I think there was a lot of people like, what, first time we'd heard of any unrest and all that, because I'd really, really liked Tosh McKinlay before that as well. I always thought he was handy. I thought he had great utility about him as well. He could get up and down, he could move in different positions and that. And he looked good. And then when that happened, I think everybody just saw. I wasn't even like, oh, get Tosh McKinlay on. It's like, okay, he's like a weirdo. How could you hit Larson? But there's a story behind it, and maybe
I think that's his legacy. His legacy is he stuck the head in Henrik.
I don't know.
There's a game we played at Ibrox where just after that, and Henrik Larsson had a black eye, but we drew 0-0 with him. But I remember Larsson hit the crossbar with a flying header. It was Charbonnier was in goal for Rangers. And he gets like a fingertip to it, which is just enough to put onto the crossbar. But we drew 0-0 that night. But Larsson was sporting a black eye that night, and I remember the whole Tosh McKinlay. So you're probably right. That has probably sort of tarnished McKinlay in the eyes of some fans. It was just one of these things that they maybe even realised they can't remember. It was just something they just annoys about him. But yeah, he was always good go forward, and the crosses he could put in, phenomenal left foot. I think it was Hearts we signed him from the season before, wasn't it?
Hearts, yeah, 350 grand. How good was Andy Tom's goal on that 3-3 game?
Oh yeah, Andy Tom. In fact, he's the next one I've got on the list, so that's a good one there, Terry. Because yeah,
that would still be travelling now if the net wasn't there.
It would, absolute net buster. But yeah, that game is an absolute classic, really. But yeah, we opened the scoring in that game. Andy Tom just picks it up about 35 yards for a goal, chase it down. The whole thing just opens up in front of him. Nobody goes and closes him down, and he just sticks his laces through it. And oh my god, absolutely rattles in it.
It had to be a belter. And you mentioned the Van Hooijdonk goal there. That header was superb. It was right into the side of the net. Yeah. And the reason I'm saying that you had to score goals like that against them was because of the guy between the sticks.
Andy Gorham. Yep.
Some of the saves that guy made that season. There was a 0-0. There was a 0-0 that season, and how we didn't score in that game, I'll never know. It was coming off his knees, his elbows, his head, every single part of that man. And I know we're going to touch on certain bits, what might have been the difference that season. Yep. But definitely one of the differences that season was the guy between the sticks for our team against the guy between the sticks for them. Because I think the goalkeeper we had, Gordon Marshall, I think he was the weak link in that team.
He was
very much so. And I don't want to be too sore on Rob Douglas, because I think Rob Douglas was the weak link in Martin's team. I think if we had a goalkeeper in those two teams, we could have done so much more. But Gordon Marshall against Gorham, there was absolutely no comparison.
Terrible.
And I mean, watching some of those videos back, and there weren't that many goals scored against us in the video, as you mentioned earlier. But when you watch the ones that were scored, fucking hell, he made Barkas look like a worldie. Do you know what I mean? He never got near anything.
Definitely wasn't the best at all, because he replaced Paddy Bonner. Paddy Bonner came back for the Tommy Burns first season, and then Gordon Marshall got sort of phased in. Bonner only played like a few games here and there that season, just there as cover. But of all the people to replace a legend like Paddy Bonner with Gordon Marshall, like, oh Jesus. Now, funny enough, Patrick McLaughlin bring this up because I have a vivid memory of this one. Pierre Van Hooijdonk does miss a header. He did a good save from goal. Depends who you ask. They'll say it's an amazing Andy Gorham save, or Van Hooijdonk fluffs it. But yeah, there was like a close range header where he could have put us 2-0 up in the game, and it ended up Rangers equalised. Then they were 2-1 up. We got a penalty. John Collins again. Gorham's not far away from saving it, and the third goal. I think I said it last week when I was talking to Russell about the 6-2 game. At that era, you felt like goals really had to be earned against Rangers, especially into Andy Gorham. But I mean, the Andy Tom one, you could put 3 goalkeepers in and you weren't stopping that. It was an absolute rocket, but phenomenal goal and a phenomenal player. But another great moment, of course, that Andy Tom had during that season was, I mentioned earlier on, there was a Scottish Cup game that we were playing against Dundee United in the quarterfinals. We were 1-0 down to them until the 89th minute. Pierre Van Hooijdonk got a late equaliser, and it looked like it was going to a replay up at Tannadice, but then Dundee United literally kick off, and Celtic win the ball in the middle of the park. It's like a slide tackle from like Jackie McNamara, puts Andy Tom right through on goal, and he's just bearing down, and he just lashes it into the net. And that's the one I'm talking about, where you see the temporary stand behind the goal, and the people, the scenes, people just falling over seats and everything, trying just celebrating. It's like, oh, what a moment that was. But yeah, Tom was he was a great player. Maybe hampered by injury over his time at Celtic. I felt maybe that was something that was a problem for him, because he was some playmaker, a great number 10 for the club, no doubt about it. Of course, his partner in crime, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, up front. 32 goals he scored in all competitions in the 95-96 season. When I did my Celtic story a while ago, he was my first Celtic hero. He really was, because, again, he's the guy that scored the goal in the cup final. So the first time I saw Celtic win a trophy, he's the one that scored. And also, he just had a fancy name because he was a Dutchman. So it's like, oh, he must be good. He's a foreigner, because he's a foreign player. And our league at that point was like very, very hard to come by. Especially in the Celtic team, we were still mostly all Scottish players. But Liam, I'll come to you, mate. What's your memories on Big Pierre?
Big Pierre, I fell in love as soon as I seen him. Just big Gallus, like Giamakis in a way, like, no.
Oh yeah,
terrible right now, but I don't know. We haven't seen Giamakis with a free kick yet. But I thought he was everything that we needed. He was a bit of that robust Gallusness. I liked it. We were bringing in foreign players as well, and he looked like he was a real winner to me. And so, the only thing was daft was his haircut at the time. It's like, it's like that was the only thing. It's like, how do you get anything on the ball? I think he was a great player for us, and I always took an interest in him as well when he left us as well, because he went to have a pretty high profile career, and there was he came back and he played against Rangers when he was I think he went back to Holland, might have been PSV, and scoring.
Feyenoord, he won the UEFA Cup with Feyenoord because he scored the Ibrox along the way in that run. It
was a cracker of a goal, and so it was like, yeah, I knew you'd do the business for us.
He would eventually.
It was exciting to see those players coming into the team. I had somebody shout at me through a shopping centre who had seen me. I was out with my wife at the time and shopping on a Saturday, and shouted, "Did you hear we signed Andy Tom?" And the entire shopping mall turns around Canadians, Indians, everything. And I'm like, really? Brilliant. And I'm all excited to talk to my wife about Andy Tom, talking about it. But people were generally excited for me.
He's I say the partnership that they two had up front that season, fantastic. Say Van Hooijdonk, 32 goals, 26 of them in the league. No surprise he won the Golden Boot that season in the Scottish Premier Division. But yeah, we'll another player though that you mentioned earlier on, Terry, and it's a good what if one. So obviously John Collins, right? This is his final season with the club, and from watching that highlight, the video that I sent you over all the goals, you actually notice it that he kind of disappears at the team as the season's starting to wind down, because I think there was he basically told the club he was staying. But yeah, you notice it in the highlights where his goals become less and less as the season goes on. But I remember early in the season, and it's obviously in that video, there's a game at Pittodrie, we're 2-0 down. Now that had been quite an unhappy hunting ground for Celtic over recent years at that point in time, because Aberdeen were finishing ahead of us in the league on a regular basis. So if it was a few years before we'd gone 2-0 down at Pittodrie, you could pretty much bet your bottom dollar that that's it, it's game over, Celtic are no coming back. But the comeback in this game gets sparked by an absolutely sublime outside of the foot shot from John Collins with that left peg. It's ridiculous. It's one of those ones, I know it's a cliche, it's wheeled all the time, but seeing current day football, see if Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi or Mbappe, any big top player in the world, scores a goal like that, the outside of the left foot, just up there right in the top corner. It's one of these ones that's doing the rounds all around the world on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's like, this is a guy in 1995 at Pittodrie for Celtic scoring that goal. How good was that though, Terry? That goal was absolutely incredible.
It was awesome. Honestly, if you look back at the goals over that season that John Collins scored and throughout his Celtic career, he was actually the first player to score a goal wearing the Predator boots.
Yes.
And see if you look back over the footage, and he had a real good knack of scoring free kicks against Rangers as well. But there's so many goals that are very, very similar. And again, looking back to sort of remembering the time and there's kind of another Celtic link here. Jock Brown was the main commentator on BBC at that time. He would soon then become the general manager or Fergus's lawyer, whichever way you want to look at it. And he was employed by Celtic for a short period of time. But he kept using the same terminology to describe John Collins's goals. It was deadly again from Collins, or it was a magnificent goal from Collins. And that's because he just was scoring goals consistently that were out of the top drawer. That goal against Aberdeen, outside of the left boot. And as you say, that game we were kind of dead and buried within 10 minutes. Collins scores that goal, sparks a revival. I think, did he also, I might be wrong, did he score a second goal in that game?
He scored the winning goal. It was Andres Tom scored one, and then Collins got the winner. It was a shot from Andres Tom that Theo Schneider's fumbles right back out to John Collins, and he sticks it in the net. It was he scored the third one.
John Collins did absolutely everything. I mean, he did movie star looks and an absolute wand of a left foot. As I say, I've kind of been harsh. I've been harsh on him over the years because of the way he left the club. I'm probably looking at him now. He's listening to him on TV, he's still as cocky as anything, and he's getting on in years. But just watching the man play, it's an absolute joy just to watch back some of those clips from back then.
Well, one of the things that from this era, Celtic's obviously the next season, even though we're not talking about that season in depth, but obviously this team would add the Canio. Next season we would get the Three Amigos. And one of the great sort of what ifs that comes up from people talking about that era is obviously at the end of the 96-97 season, Tommy Burns is sacked, and obviously the Three Amigos all disappear. Van Hooijdonk goes to Nottingham Forest before the season ended. But in that summer, Jorge Cadete and Di Canio both got out of the club. Basically, Di Canio went to Sheffield Wednesday. I think Cadete might have went back to Portugal. But people always say, imagine if Di Canio and Cadete had stayed and then Larsson came in under Wim Janssen and you had like Larsson playing alongside they two. But here's one and all, imagine John Collins had stayed an extra year and played alongside Di Canio, Cadete and Van Hooijdonk the season after. Imagine that, because could he have been a difference, Liam? Because obviously the next season we failed to win the league again, but he could have been a crucial player as well if the 96-97 season. Imagine Collins and Di Canio on the wings with Cadete and Van Hooijdonk as the two centre forwards. Imagine that, tantalising, isn't it?
Collins had a football brain, right? So he had an intelligence in the midfield that made his game that's how you could get away with all these wee flick shots and that. His technique was flawless. And I could see him feeding them, just becoming it might have added longer to his career as well. Where more he could change his role and be that person that just everything goes through him, almost like predating the way Pirlo played,
Oh yeah.
As he got older, you could have seen him just lapping it up with the boys. That would have been awesome to watch.
It would have been. But as Terry said, when you look at the way his career panned out, and in hindsight, he probably made a wise decision given what Monaco achieved over the next couple of years. Then he got moved to the Premier League with Everton first, then he played with Fulham, didn't he? Or there was the other way around, Fulham then Everton. But yeah, he was definitely both of their clubs. And another player I just wanted to highlight at the start of the season, obviously, who signed him was good old John Hughes. He wasn't the best of defenders, but he definitely played with his heart on his sleeve. And his big moment that season is the 1-1 draw against Rangers at Ibrox. He scores a very late equaliser to salvage a draw. I think it's on St. Patrick's Day or around about St. Patrick's Day in March 1996. We're down to 10 men. Jackie McNamara gets sent off. We got a free kick very late in the game. Peter Grant just pings it in, and big Yogi Hughes is there to head it in and get the equaliser. But which obviously kept a pretty good record going that season. So against Rangers, it's quite an obscene record we've got that season. And again, still couldn't win the league. One defeat. But a typical Celtic lineup that season, if everyone was fit, we usually would see Gordon Marshall, Tom Boyd, Tosh McKinlay, Jackie McNamara, John Hughes, Peter Grant, Simon Donnelly, Paul McStay, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, Andreas Tom and John Collins would be the sort of go-to starting 11 during that season. See how times have changed, but this team, despite having a massive core of Scottish players, the gallousness in that team, the flamboyance, and I recommend it to any of the younger viewers that are watching out there that come on the show regularly in the chat. If you haven't really looked at this season, go and look up Celtic FC on Target. It's the video that I sent to Terry and to Liam to watch. It's just a review of the 95-96 season, and just watch some of the goals, because there's even guys who are on the fringe of the team that, like Brian McLaughlin, who scores an incredible goal at Tynecastle. At one point, we've absolutely rattled Hearts like 4-0 at Tynecastle, and Brian McLaughlin has a blinder a day. And it's just like, so there was even players outside of the sort of core starting 11 that were coming in and contributing at the time, because it was a very, very exciting time, a very exciting team. But to say, we'll touch on it next, is the reasons why this team didn't succeed the way it did. And probably one of them is probably Gordon Marshall, to be fair. That's probably a glaring one. So well spotted there, Terry. That's definitely a glaring one. But yeah.
There was one other as well, Phil. Phil O'Donnell was in this side.
Phil O'Donnell.
Phil O'Donnell he picked up an injury quite early in the season and dropped out. Not superb player as well at that stage. You had a midfield. You had Paul McStay. Obviously, he was starting to come to the end. But you had Paul McStay, you had John Collins, you had Phil O'Donnell. Superb midfield.
This is the last season that we get a real full season out of Paul McStay, because it's the next season that he sort of gets hampered with an ankle injury, where he's in and out the team intermittently. Then he retires at the end of the 96-97.
His testimonial was during this season, I think.
It was Man United, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Always played Man United testimonials. Did they wear that infamous grey kit that night?
No idea.
I think they did. I've got a vision in my head as playing them in a grey kit, and it was also foggy as well, which probably wouldn't have helped them, because they moaned about the grey kit and they couldn't see each other. So if it was foggy that night at Celtic Park, then they were really, really screwed. Couldn't see each other at all. Somebody in the comments will probably come in and say they were at that game, but I'm sure I got a vision in my head that they were wearing the grey kit that night, Man United. But yeah, we'll now look at the reasons why the Celtic team came up a little bit short. Yeah, there's Stephen Colfart saying that it was the grey kit. It was, but I think we beat them or not that night, because we've got we play Man U a lot in testimonials, but we've got a really good record against them. There was one I should have mentioned it last week when we were doing the Chris Sutton episode, the 4-3 game down at Old Trafford. Was it Ryan Giggs' testimonial maybe? And it's the one when Chris Sutton and David Beckham get into a fight and Neil Lennon's scrapping with him and stuff as well. Aye. So you're not just a friendly, there you go. Slapping each other around in a testimonial match. But yeah, so obviously choke artists, because we squandered this one, we blew it. To say this team loses one league game all season. If you're an outsider looking in and you see a team with that record, just tell somebody, this team only lost one league game. You go, that's really impressive. You would think they won the title. No, they didn't, because at the end of the season they had 11 draws to their name. 11 out of 36 league games. The final record, I believe, was 36 played, 24 games won, 11 drawn and 1 lost. But yeah, it was the this is where it was let down. So the games that sort of let us down really. Well, say against Rangers, we lost. The only game we did lose was to Rangers early in the season at Celtic Park. They beat us 2-0. Paul Gascoigne and Alec Cleland scored. But then the other 3 games we played against Rangers, we draw 3 each with them, 0-0 with them. And as Terry mentioned that one earlier on, the New Year game, the 0-0, it's a mystery that it finishes goalless, because we threw everything at them, and Andy Gordon was just like, nah, you're no scoring tonight. We just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And then the final meeting at Ibrox that season was the 1-1 draw when John Hughes got the late equaliser. We also did play them in the League Cup, because our cup campaigns that season, we were out quite early in the League Cup. Rangers beat us in that one at Celtic Park, 1-0. McCoy scored. And our European exploits that year, they weren't good. We beat a team called Kasice in the first round of the Cup Winners' Cup. We only scraped past them, I believe it was, and then, or was it Kasice the next season? I'm not quite sure, but we played a team early on the Cup Winners' Cup. But the first round, it was quite typical for Celtic to get dumped out of Europe quite early before Christmas with this one, and it was Paris Saint-Germain came to town. This is long before Paris Saint-Germain stumbled into a big pile of money, basically, but they still had a hell of a team at that time. They had guys like Yuri Jokayev and Patrice Loco, and one of the answers for the quiz later, Stefan Mahe, was in that Paris Saint-Germain team. That's the one that Terry had stumbled across earlier on. We were talking off camera, but yeah, they beat us 1-0.
Also, a certain Paul Le Guen, who would turn up in Glasgow at some point.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, he would indeed. He was playing in midfield for Paris Saint-Germain at that point. But yeah, they rattled us 3-0 at Celtic Park, and we lost 1-0 in Paris. So not the best of times there. But in terms of like the domestic games, one team in particular that was an absolute pain in the backside for us was Kilmarnock, because overall our record, we dropped points to Motherwell twice, we've dropped points to Hibs. Kilmarnock 3 times Raith Rovers and Falkirk. 4 of those draws as well out of the 11 also came at Celtic Park, where teams are able to come to Celtic Park and hold on for a point. But it's one of those, what could have been moments, guys. Frustrating to say the least, Terry.
Yeah. As you say, you lose one match, you expect to win the title. I suppose it's a tale of two ends of the park. You've got a guy that can't keep anything out at one end, and as we then seen in the second part of the season, you have a guy that can't stop scoring, but you can't get playing him because somebody won't sign a piece of paper for you.
Yep.
It's just those draws. I mean, there were so many of those where Celtic just dominated possession, got hit for a sucker goal at the other end, bombarded them the rest of the game, and just couldn't get over the line. And I suppose you look back at those Rangers games as well. Perhaps if we could have turned any of those draws into wins, that gives you another 2 points, the momentum swing, and all that kind of thing. It's just one of those seasons you'll always look back and think of what might have been.
I'm sure Rangers obviously they lost more games than us that season. There's just the draws the last time, but I can remember there was one night in particular where Hearts rolled into Ibrox and Alan Johnston, who'd go on to play for Rangers, scored a hat-trick and Hearts beat them 3-0 that night. I can remember that one because I remember in school the next day, like the guys like, oh man, we've got a real chance to go top here. I think we must have blown it shortly after. And funny enough, Patrick McGowan was right. The one game that we did actually beat Kilmarnock that season, they were beating us 2-0 at one point at Celtic Park. We ended up beating them 4-2. And as you said earlier on before we came on, the pink and blue kit that Kilmarnock had with Mcginlay'S as a sponsor, that was some of the kits were quite wild though, weren't they, during that season when you think about it? Mid-90s, man. What a time.
I loved their kit. Your kit I thought was classic. You're wearing it now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm indeed.
With the Celtic lettering on the back and all that.
Indeed, aye. C.R. Smith on the sponsor.
I thought the away kit was good as well. That was the black number and it had the white and the green stripes that came to it. And I thought there was a whole, I'm looking back now at it, when I was watching that video, there was a brilliant Aberdeen away kit that was all black and it had some sort of Mexican stuff going on here. And I think it was a good time for kits in Scotland,
It was, I know we're talking about Aberdeen wore their away kit against us that day. We beat them 3-2, but it was like a sort of really dark blue or black one with sort of red and yellow up here on the shoulder, or golden red, and it was like this weird design, but it was just typical of the 90s at the time. I think Hibs had an away kit that was purple with green stripes with Cala Gas as the sponsor. So that's the sponsors I always remember. So Mcginlay'S sponsored Kilmarnock. North Sound Radio was Aberdeen, stuff like that. These things always just stand out in my head when I envision the kit. I can see the sponsor in the front, but Mcginlay'S for Killie. Cala Gas was, and Strombo was Hearts. Hearts had Strombo as their sponsor at the time. But these things always stand out to me. But it was in terms of the results, as I say, well, we're dropping points to Kilmarnock 3 times in a season. It's like, well, you can't really expect you can't beat them. But of course, the thing is, guys, if only there was a player out there that could maybe turn some of these draws. I mean, somebody who knows where the back of the net is, a prolific, improving goal scorer. If only we could find one, maybe that would have changed our fortunes. Because yes, guys, there was somebody out there, but it turned out that the SFA weren't quite keen on letting them play just yet, because this is the big story, the 95-96 season. So the Jorge Cadete saga. Now, this is incredible. And again, for an outsider looking in, some of the mad stuff that's happened in Scottish football over the years, and naturally our pals across the city will go on about, the SFA did this to them and that to them. More so it's they kind of did it to themselves, but typically it's everybody else's fault bar them. But here is an example, guys, of the head of the Football Association in this country was found in a court of law and admitted his guilt that he purposely held up a registration of a player in order to favour another team. Where, maybe other than Italy, where else in world football would you see something mad like that? And you know what the worst bit about it is? This just kind of gets forgotten about. It does. I don't feel that enough gets made of this, and it's like, this is absurd. This is, I don't care if it was 95, 96, it was all those years ago. The fact that it's just kind of accept it. Okay, yeah, Fergus McCann did pursue it for years, and it wasn't until 1999 before Jim Farry lost his job. But it's mad that we just kind of go, fair enough. It happened. I just feel like, man,
it was almost felt. I remember at that time, and that type. I know this is probably an extreme example, but it was just accepted. You knew that things like that were going on, and I suppose it was one of those ones you didn't have any proof. But fair play to Fergus, he wasn't going to let it go. He's seen it right through to completion. But it was accepted. As a Celtic fan, you just accepted that everything was stacked against you and that there was all sorts of skullduggery going on. And, you always got the tag of being a paranoid Celtic fan, and that tag still gets attached till today. But this was proved in a court of law that this did happen. And this wasn't one isolated incident. There was all sorts of stuff going on the pitch, off the pitch, to try and stop Celtic Football Club from winning games, from winning trophies. And this was just one of a long list of incidents, albeit this is probably one of the most extreme and probably one of the only real ones that has been actually proven to be not just in somebody's head. This the guy admitted it, and it did actually happen. Unbelievable.
We'll give people again who might be oblivious to this, any of our younger viewers, this is the sort of timeline. So on the 24th of February, a home game against Partick Thistle, Jorge Cadete is unveiled at Celtic Park long before the days of the disco lights, when Bio got unveiled with the dark and then the light came on, he's standing there with the scarf. Long before those days, it's very simple. Came on to the park. This is our new signing, Jorge Cadete, everybody. Everyone's happy about it. So that was on the 24th of February. But curiously, he wouldn't kick a ball for the club until the 1st of April 1996. He wasn't injured. There wasn't some sort of suspension that he was carrying from his other league. No. I say Jim Farry, the head of the SFA, just decided to purposely fanny about with the registration of the player and kept putting it back, because this is long before the days of transfer windows. We didn't have a cut-off date. And the transfer window, let's say we're signing players in February, March of the season. But yeah, there was none of that going on. But yeah, he just kept on pushing it back. Now, crucially, he ended up missing 6 games, which included a 0-0 draw with Motherwell along the way, and that 1-1 draw against Rangers at Ibrox, the one when John Hughes equalised. 2 draws that we could have turned into wins that would have been a massive difference had we had him and Pierre Van Hooijdonk up front. With the way we were attacking at that point in time, it's one of those what could have been moments. But yeah, he eventually gets to play on the 1st of April 1996 against Aberdeen, a very, very famous game. We absolutely trounced them. It was live on STV that night because during the 90s, even though Sky had the rights to Scottish football, they shared the rights with STV and BBC, and they would give them like a wee handful of games to cover. But it was a midweek game against Aberdeen. We beat them 5-0. Jerry McNee came maybe on commentary because I was watching it on telly, but and also in that video clip, Jerry McNee's the one commentating. But yeah, it's the 5th goal. He comes off the bench, finally gets the big standing ovation for the crowd. We're going to get to see him in action. He's only in the park a matter of minutes. Peter Grant plays a brilliant through ball. He doesn't even need to break his stride. It's so perfectly just right in front of him. Takes a touch, bearing down on, I believe, Phil Schnelders would have still been in goal for Aberdeen at this point, and he just dinks it over him. And as the story goes, Terry, apparently Radio 5 Live, who were covering the game, apparently their reception went out because the decibel level at Celtic Park took them off the air for a period. It's one of the great stories of that night.
Yeah, Richard Gordon mentioned it when he appeared in the Bhoycie Bus a number of weeks ago. Richard Gordon mentioned that. I do remember. I wasn't able to see that game on the television, but I remember listening to it on 5 Live. I remember it going off. It was probably a moment where you actually thought, oh, do you know what? This guy could make the difference here. But unfortunately, it did. It proved to be just too late. But even that night, when you've got to remember, there was only 2 sides to the stadium. The 2 ends, other than the temporary stand, weren't there. But the noise level was unbelievable. Going back to the sort of the whole cadet saga, because it had been held up for such a length of time, he'd lost match sharpness and match fitness. Yeah. So that's why he was on the bench, and he was kind of eased in from that game forward. But if you look at this guy's record for the very short time that he was at Celtic, and he was a particular favourite of mine. I remember him dandering onto the pitch with his brown coat and his hair, and quite ashamedly, I became a huge fan of Jorge Cadete. I grew my hair very similar. I got it cut across the front. I got the blonde highlights. I even bought a brown coat to sort of mimic the one that he wore on the pitch at halftime that day. I'm quite embarrassing looking back at it now, but I was a young lad at the time.
Did he do this with his collar? Did he do the collar up thing like Cantona did as well? Cantona had everybody doing that at that point.
I think he did, but if you look at the guy's record, remember he didn't play full games at the start because Jim Farry made sure that he was out of condition. He scored 30 goals in 37 appearances. Not all of those were full appearances.
Wow.
If we had got that guy in for those 5 or 6 games, given that he was scoring a goal a game, that would have won us the title.
I definitely would have.
Well, one other wee Jorge Cadete moment I'll just share. The year after this season, I moved to Birmingham to go to uni for 3 years. Jorge Cadete's Celtic career, unfortunately, was cut short. It was he was one of the 3 amigos. He ended up going to Celta Vigo. I was in Birmingham, and just as a football fan, I just started going along to Villa games just to watch games. Always wore my Celtic top to the games. But I was in the crowd and I got a ticket for Aston Villa against Celta Vigo in a European game, and I was in the very front row in one of the corners, and Cadete seen the Celtic top and he came over right over to me, just come over and give me a thumbs up.
Oh, nice.
And I just absolutely loved the guy. I just thought him and Celtic were absolutely perfect. And he was an absolute nailed on cert for first goal every single game.
Oh God!
I just wish again. I wish he could have stayed longer. I wish the Canio could have stayed longer. You touched on him a wee bit. It was a great time to be a Celtic fan, but it wasn't a successful period. But there was still a real enjoyment just of watching this team playing that Celtic way that you talked about, and Tommy Burns, the types of players he was trying to bring into the club. Amazing.
Now, as the story goes, Liam, due to this delay, even though he's now been allowed to play on the 1st of April, he's finally able to play league games. But because of this lengthy delay, he's missed a deadline to be registered to play in the Scottish Cup, because apparently you had to register players for the Scottish Cup and the league and so forth, different competitions. Because on the 7th of April, we play Rangers in the semi-final at Hampden. And again, as Terry says, this could have been the difference. We lose 2-1 in the end. But obviously, our chairman at the time, the bonnet-wearing Fergus McCann, as we talked about him on the 90 to 94 edition that we did, the bullish wee guy that he wasn't going to let this go. He could smell a rat here with this one. So obviously he fought it in the courts. So say went all the way through to 1999 before there was a resolution on it, where Jim Farry was relieved of his duties at the SFA finally. But how much would we benefit nowadays from having a chairman with that attitude that Fergus McCann has?
I mean, when you listen to, I remember as soon as Gerard came in, he started talking about referees and the history of, one-sided decisions going against Rangers. I mean, I think that's the extreme. I don't want a board to come out and talk like that. But see, letting things like this slip. I mean, we should never, ever let the SFA away with that. Nope. Everything that's happened from there on in, it doesn't look from this point of view that, that was just one bad apple, because as Terry and you were saying earlier, there's many, many decisions that have been equally as bad that's come from that organisation. But the fact that they actually got caught, that's what blows my mind. And I think that's why Fergus went with, I think Jock Brown got hired the next year, right?
97. I was in 97, 98 seasons, right? So 97 he came in. Yep.
So I'm sure probably that had a lot to do with him getting hired, being Fergus's lawyer and that, because at that point we were realizing that we weren't playing against, it wasn't a level playing field. It just been proven at that point. I'd love to see our board take on positions the way Fergus does. I think right now, like with refereeing, I really thought last year that I was surprised that nobody came out and talked about the amount of players that were getting injured, like with hammer thrower tackles, that referees were just like, oh, well, that's Scottish football. We're trying to sell a product. We're trying to interest young players to come and play in Scotland. And yet that sort of stuff's going on. That's the thing that I think, Peter Lyle or somebody should be addressing as well, is like the markability of our game and removing that sort of stuff where, Bobby Madden goes down to England and is getting absolutely slaughtered in his first game.
Mm-hmm.
As a leg breaking tackle goal as a yellow card, and they're like, get back to Scotland. We don't want that here.
I think there's nearly a danger that we could slip back into or sleepwalk back into that type of era where you just accept these things. I mean, the one that I just can't believe recently is John Beaton in a Rangers bar the day that he refereed the Rangers match against Celtic and made all sorts of dubious decisions, and yet that night he's strutting about in a Rangers bar. Like, where else would you get it?
Well, look at Madden's last game. That game that we lost to them in the cup. My God, I mean, we were all right. We were playing well, but every time our players were trying to break through the midfield, they were getting tackled. And then we find out, oh well, this is Bobby Madden's last game. It can't be that bad. There was at one point where Bhoycie had both arms around Rogic, and when Rogic slugged him off, he gave the foul against him. I've never seen more blatant cheating in my life. And the fact that we've proved it and we know that it goes on, we'd be more vocal about it, because maybe we have another Farry, or a Madden or a Beaton or that, and I think it has to be called out, because they're calling out like 5 centimeter offsides, that somehow we're not conspiring against them.
Just like to pick up there on Stephen Murdoch's point, but we'll see, looking back on this season, there could have been so much more come from it, and Stephen's point there that Tommy deserves so much more. I just hope that from his grave that Tommy has sort of got some kind of understanding that about the stuff that happened in 2012 and the fact that he actually did things right. He did a good job. Yep. He would have won that league. He was cheated, and I just hope that wherever he's at now that he knows that.
Oh, definitely does. And I told Stephen Murdoch's right about Tommy does so much more. But here's a comment that I spotted going up. And this is an interesting one. I know it's not necessarily the season we're talking about, but I didn't think we had. This was a thing, because it was I thought they were a dying breed. But Monty has put Fergus McCann, boo. Now I'm looking down the list, because Monty usually follows his comments up with a wee fishing emoji, because he's out there fishing, and I'm looking and I'm like, Monty, you're being serious, because obviously there was that issue, and I know it's a different season and I will go to talk about it, but there was the whole Fergus McCann thing on the start of his last season after we'd won the title, and he unfurled the flag and he was booed by the fans. Remember that one?
Does that go back to the Boys Against Bigotry?
Well, it was after we won the league in '98. Wim Jansen obviously left or got sacked, however it was done, and then we spent the whole summer basically looking for a new manager, while Rangers went out and spent an absolute fortune on like Amato and Kanchelskis and guys like Rod Wallace and stuff all came in. They just reinforced the team, Newman, Van Bronckhorst, while we basically looked for a new manager, brought in Joseph Venglos late in the summer. And so when all of that came together, when Fergus came out to unveil the flag after his winning our first title in 10 years, a lot of fans booed him. But yeah, I see here Monty putting Fergus McCann boo. I know he was quite a bullish character at times. So like, he was very much, no, we're going to do it my way or no way. And obviously it cost people, Tommy Burns, who was obviously a fan favourite, ended up losing his job and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Fergus did what he did. And if he didn't, the club wouldn't be in the position it is now. When you think about it, it really wouldn't. But I did see that comic pop and I was like, no, somebody's put boo Fergus McCann. But it's all about opinions at the end of the Bhoycie Bus. I'm not going to cut anybody down and say you're right or you're wrong. But yeah, it's definitely, it's been a polarising one over the years, because there is a collection of fans out there that are a bit,
just touch on it very briefly, because you could do a whole series of pods on the Boys Against Bigotry campaign. But and I know that was one thing that made Fergus unpopular, because basically he was telling Celtic supporters what songs they could and couldn't sing inside Celtic Park. Monty's just elaborating maybe what he's...
It's a fair point. It's around the Three Amigos, I think he's mostly talked about, because again, it was all contract disputes that led to them all leaving.
But the Boys Against Bigotry campaign made him unpopular as well, because essentially he was saying what songs could and couldn't be sang. Fergus's vision, and you can kind of, I can see it today, having been going to Celtic Park from 1986. atmosphere and environment within Celtic Park now is very, very different to what it was then.
Yeah.
Fergus's vision was to build this 60,000 stadium, and his vision was to fill that. And he felt that to do that, he needed to make Celtic appealing to more than just the people who went along at that time. And he felt that some of the songs that were being sang were probably not going to entice certain elements of society to support Celtic. And I suppose if I look back to then against now, when you go to Celtic Park now, there's more females than there's ever been before. There's more kids than there's ever been before. Back then it was kind of just, and again, the crowds back in the day, you've got to understand, even this season that we're looking at with Tommy Burns and the 95-96 Return to Paradise, the average crowd that season was about 36,000, which if you look back through the average crowd history of Celtic, that was the third highest average attendance in the history of the club. The 68-69 season, I believe, and one back in the 40s, we had a higher average attendance. So Fergus knew what he had a vision. He knew what he wanted to do. He built the stadium, and he did whatever he needed to do to make sure that that stadium was filled. He also had a vision that 80% of those seats within that stadium would be paid for by season tickets. I think if you look at what we've got now, it's 95% plus. Yes, there's a totally different conversation around the fact that they're not filled every week, but that was his vision, that we will have this stadium and that we will have a large proportion of those seats paid for, whether somebody turns up or not. And he felt the atmosphere within the stadium was something that he needed to address in order for us to be able to fill that 60,000 stadium, as well as putting on a really good product on the park and bringing success to the club.
It definitely was. So that leads us on then to our final word on this season, the what if, the great the great debate. This is out of the Rangers 9 in a row era from 89 up to 1997. This is the closest that we got, because the next season, even though we improved on the side a wee bit in terms of the personnel in the team, we fell short by a bit of a bigger distance. But this one was the big what if. A couple of wee results were just changed, say the whole Jim Farry cadet thing. But overall, when you have to sum up the season, the best way to look at it is plus points, as we found out the team are now playing with a style and a swagger fitting the ethos of the club, as I said earlier on, the Celtic way. Celtic Park is now back and it's coming together nicely. The rebuild would continue over the next few years, and then of course we've got the stadium that we have these days. Negatives at the end of the day, we were wasteful with chances. We had a very bad goalkeeper and a few defensive mistakes let us down, dropping points in silly games that we should have won. With the cadet signing being the difference, it's a good chance it is one of these ones we'll never ever know the answer to. And let's be honest, since then, things have been okay when you look at the overall, how the trajectory of how both teams has went. I think there's been a happy ending for Celtic in that one compared to our pals across the city. But yeah, would it have been enough to maybe, if the cadet came in, maybe win the league or even salvage the Scottish Cup that season to at least get some more silverware? Say we'll just never know. But in the end, we're looking like we're on the right track heading into the 96-97 season, where we're going to try and attempt to stop Rangers winning 9 in a row. Going into that season, we would add Alan Stubbs and Paolo Di Canio at the team. But that is most definitely another very eventful story and a very eventful character for another time. We'll delve into 96-97 at some point. But yeah, that wraps up the 95-96 season. But gentlemen, at the start of the show, obviously, I did a rather lengthy
I haven't even been thinking about it.
Yeah. So to recap, because people might have came in late, as you know, I always do a trivia question at the start. So tonight it's themed around Jorge Cadete, because the question was, Jorge Cadete obviously signed for us that season. He joined a club of 12 players, including himself, who have played for Celtic in Europe and against them in Europe. So can you name the other players? I've got it on my phone this time instead of on my notepad here. So, Terry, I'll come to you. Well, we've got Mahi earlier on, so we've got Mahi off the list.
Rule him out. And then we've got Liam's one that he threw in, Bratback.
Bratback, yes. So we've got Bratback and we have got Mahi. I will also need to probably type these at the same time.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, we'll go to you. Go for it.
But you go first, eh?
You go first, then. You go, mate.
We'll go first. Elyounoussi. Well done, mate. I thought he was one of like the really tough ones, but yeah, Elyounoussi also scored against us. Aye, right back, Mahi, Elyounoussi. Well done, mate. I say he even scored against us, I know, and scored for us in Europe. So it's done both.
I'll go with another one that scored against us as well, Henrik Larsson.
Of course, yeah.
You're cheating now. You're cheating. You're taking
He's on a roll, mate. He's on a roll.
I was going to wait and see if you missed Henrik. I was going to do that. Right, I'll go for two then. So we've got Cadet, we've got Mahe, we've got brought back, we've got
Elyounoussi and Larsson. So we've got 5 so far.
So it's just Europe. It's not the Champions League.
Just in Europe in general.
Sviatchenko.
Yes, he did that. Aye.
Mark Viduka.
Yeah, Croatia Zagreb.
Over to you, Liam.
Reggie Blinker.
No, not Reggie Blinker, no. Played for us in Europe, but didn't play against us in Europe.
Joe Ingeberget.
Can't say that. Joe Ingeberget is correct, mate. He even scored against us. Joe Ingeberget scored against us in Malmo, at home, Malmo. Collins didn't play against us, Monty. Elyounoussi and Viduka are correct. But yeah, Berget, well done. Another obscure one there. Well done, Terry.
Here's a mad one. Bangura played. Did he play?
Yeah, Mo Bangura. The UEFA ruling is people on loan can play against their parents, because Patrick Roberts played against Man City for us in a Champions League game. There was the famous one with Chelsea, played Atletico Madrid in 2014, and Courtois, their goalkeeper, was on loan at Atletico and played in goal at Stamford Bridge for Atletico, and Atletico ended up winning the game and getting to the final. But yeah, UEFA's rules are on loan players can play against their parent club. So yeah, that's another one that is correct, mate. Bangura, he was on loan at Elfsborg in a Champions League qualifier, played against us under Lenny.
Okay, aye, right.
Seri.
Joe Hart?
No. When Man City played us, it was Claudio.
My next lot are just guesses.
Yeah, that's fair dues.
Joe Hart. Pookie?
No.
No. Andy Hinkle?
Yes, Andy Hinkle, mate. Played for Stuttgart against us in the run to Seville. Yeah, Andy Hinkle is correct, mate. Well done.
Bo Richter? No.
Dirk Richter, no.
Okay. Donati?
No.
We're just being stupid now.
Phone names there. Let's take it. Well, Liam, you get any more before I have a wee look in the comments and see if there's.
No, I was trying to think of one that played with Liverpool that we might have signed, but.
Roy Keane?
Let's have a wee look.
Roy Keane played both? No?
Let's have a wee look down there.
Did Roy Keane play against Celtic in Europe?
I was thinking, right.
Matthew Duff's got 2 there.
Arcas, that's a good one.
Yeah, the fact that I found is out of date, because when they posted this, it was in 2021, funny enough. But yeah,
did Mona McLeod play against us for Dortmund? No, an older one.
See, Murdo McLeod. He's on the list.
Is he on the list?
Yeah, he's on the list, mate.
Taking that one.
How many do we have left?
Well, Frimpong's the most recent one, because that was last season, but that was when this list was posted in 2021. That hadn't happened yet. So let's see. So far we've got Cadete, Bratback, Mahe, Elyounoussi, Larsson, Sviatchenko, Viduka, Berget, Bangura, Hinkle, Murdo McLeod, Barkas, Frimpong. So there's a couple more to this, but from the list that I've got, we're still missing 2. Yeah, because we've got Cadet, Mahe, McLeod, Viduka, Bratback, Hinkle, Bangura, Berget, Elyounoussi, Larsson. So so there's 2. Quite a big one, actually, quite an obvious one, and one that's a wee bit more obscure, maybe. One's from Ronnie Dyler's era, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Did I or no? Nah, I'm not going to get it.
You're not a million miles away with the position. Centre back.
Boyata?
No, Boyata.
Oh, wait a minute.
We played against this guy's team in the 2014-15 season, and then the season after, we signed him, and he was an injury-prone player, constantly injured. had a good run under Brendan for a spell. Very famous for putting Kenny Miller in the air.
Siminovic.
Joseph Siminovic played against us for Dynamo Zagreb in a UEFA or Europa League game. And then played for us. And the other one's a bit, well, it's easy to forget. He was Celtic born and bred, came through the youth academy. And then we sold him to big bucks to a foreign team. And then we come back to play Aidan McGeady. Yeah.
Yes, Aidan McGeady.
I was going to say that's right.
Spartak Moscow. So that's all the ones off of my list, because I say this is a tweet that I'd found with this fact, and it's actually somebody who's quite a prominent poster on another Celtic pod that Russell doesn't get on too well with. I'm blaming them for this one. Blaming them. But yeah, they had Larson, Berge, El Yunusi, McGeady, Bangura, Hinkle, Bratback, Viduka, Murdo McLeod, Cadet, Mahe, Joseph Siminovic. The 12, but yeah, obviously Matthew Duff's got it there because these are two of the more recent ones. There's Barkas and Frimpong are on that list as well. But yeah, it's still quite but there's only a few of them in there that have also scored, which would be Larson, El Yunusi, Bratback, and Cadet himself. Berge scored against us, but didn't score for us in Europe. But there's only 4 of them that have actually done both, scored against and for us in the European competition. But yeah, let's face Bratback, Cadet, El Yunusi, and Larson. Obviously, the Larson one hurts very much, that Barcelona game. But yeah, I'm just having a look here again because there might have been another couple that slipped through the net. You know what these are like. McGeady's there. Somebody's got that one. McGeady, yeah, all good. Yeah, they're all covered. Yes, Patrick McLaughlin, he was happy. He got Murdo McLeod in that one. But yeah, I will. Before we finish up, then I'm going to try and see if I can get this to work. So I'm always terrible with the old share screen thing, but I'm going to try this. Right?
What have you got for us?
Oh, let's see if I can get it. It's never. It's always Phil versus technology when I try to do this. Let's see. Let's see if this works. Share. Okay, so let me know if it's worked.
Yeah, we can see it.
So last night I said on the TNF about the next 5 shows coming up, and in case anybody missed them, I'm just going to give you a wee preview with the old graphics. This is the one we're on just now. This is the coming 95-96, the Entertainers season. So next week we will be doing Ronnie Dyler's first season, 2014-15. We signed Mackay, Stephen, and Armstrong together. We had Denier and Virgil van Dijk together. What a centre back pairing that was. Obviously, Ronnie won 2 trophies. Could have been 3. Obviously, another guy on the front pitch there, Jorge Cadete. What could have been with him, where he was on fire for the first half of the season, then he just basically downed tools in the second half of the season. So I'll be interested to talk about that. And obviously, as I say, he could have won a treble that year. We were talking there about some dodgy decisions that have gone against us. Then, my God, the Josh Meekings handball. That'll never be forgotten, that one. So that'll be on the agenda next week. The week after that, I think Russell might want to come on this one. It is Neil Lennon's second season as full-time manager. 15 points behind in October, top of the league by January the 1st. Rangers, of course, went bust in the season. We got a very strange technicality getting back into Europe with FCC on. Just the chairman was an absolute madman. And even though UEFA said to him, don't play these players, they're not legally registered, he just went, nah, we're going to play them anyway. UEFA were like, well, off you go. And we got put back in.
By the way, how did he get that team into the Europa League group stage? He's now got a draw against Man United.
I know. Real Sociedad, Man United. I know. And Sheriff, the team that beat Real Madrid last season.
Absolutely.
So
amazing.
yeah, we've got that on the agenda. So that'll be a good one to talk about. And also there's the famous 3-0. We were doing 3-0 against Kilmarnock at half-time and came back and drew 3 each, the game that basically saved Lenny's job. So I think Russell might want to be on that one because I know he's got a lot to say about that particular era, Neil Lennon. But the season after that is a big one. It's stopping the 10, guys. Stopping the 10. There's Murdo there. There he is, Murdo McLeod. Wim Janssen. So that'll be a good one to talk about, where we lifted the League Cup and the Scottish Premier Division for the first time in 10 years. So that'll be coming up in week 3 of the next sort of block of 5 I've got. And then I'm going back to doing a player-specific one. I said it last night. It's going to be Lubo Moravchik, because this is a fascinating one. Lubo, it's like, how did this guy go under so many radars for so long? So I'm really interested to look into his career and just, again, one of the best players to ever turn out for Celtic in my lifetime. And it's just like, man, how did so many people miss the boat on this guy? Lucky for us, we got him, but it's one of those what could have been guys. Imagine we got him when he was a bit younger. It's the thing that so many fans say. Imagine we got this guy when he was like 10 years younger, 5 years younger. But what a player. So I'm looking forward to talking about Lubo Moravcik. And then the final one out of the next 5 is going to be the double treble season. So I'm looking forward to talking about that one because there's some mad moments along the way, especially the game at Ibrox where we were doing it 10 men and beat them 3-2. The one that I think pretty much broke them, didn't they? Where they then decided to cut our allocation after that. It was that game, wasn't it? So I'm looking forward to talking about that one. But that's the next 5 coming up then. So Ronnie's first season, because I haven't done anything on Ronnie yet in the Celtic years. Neil Lennon's second season as manager, Stopping the 10 season, a Lubo Moravcik player focus one, and the double treble are what's coming up in the next 5 weeks on the old Celtic years. So there you go. Just thought I would show everybody, get them all excited, you know. But yeah, that's what's coming up then. So, guys, do you know, Fire, this is the first time I've managed to do a Bustalgia, and my target's always try and get it to 2 hours. 2 hours is always like the sort of go-to. An hour and 56 minutes we're coming up to, so we're just inside 2 hours. So I'm actually quite happy that I've managed to pull it off this time because it usually runs about 2 hours, 45 minutes. And I know the people do love it. I do get that, but at the same time, it is a long show, and we're now starting at 9 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock on a Friday night. It can be a bit, it's quite a long shift to put in. But yeah, I say next week I will have another panel joining me. Liam, you're my sort of co-host on this. Will you be on to talk about Ronnie next week, mate?
Oh, I can't wait to talk about Ronnie.
Yeah, Ronnie. He's like the Ronnie Rower, mate. Ronnie Rower. Yeah, we'll be back to talk about that. Plenty. And I'll get some more people on. It might be a panel of 3, panel of 4. I'll try to keep it to that. I always feel that's the sweet spot. Anything more than 4, it becomes a bit like hard to get.
Get somebody good on instead of me.
No, where you go, Where you go. Terry, you're back on Sunday, I believe, on Post-Match Pish because you're the voice and you're the face of Post-Match Pish, I do believe.
I just need to check with Russell and see what time he's coming on.
So you'll be back then. Yeah, and I will be back next week unless Russell needs me to do anything else. I'm always on standby to step in whenever I'm needed. So, yeah, guys, we'll head out now. So thanks, everybody, for watching in the comments and so forth. So it's always good to spend my Friday nights with you talking about the thing that I love the most in life, Celtic Football Club. So, yeah, we shall be out of here now, and we shall catch you all later, folks.
Cheers. See you later, Phil.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.